trunk is permanently attached to a food bowl, and that is why he's portly, by the way. He's constantly eating. Here's another picture of Ganesh right here, very interesting. But see, nobody has ever asked the question, what was this origin of this elephant god? Because I'm really sorry, again, and I'm deliberately repeating myself, it's subliminal messaging. I could talk backwards, but that would be really weird. But, you have to ask yourself the question, how did the story of Ganesh originate? Why would anyone in their right mind, people from India, for crying out loud, who are familiar with elephants, why would they all of a sudden start to worship an elephant god that walks on two legs? Because elephants, last time we all checked, they walk on four legs. And all of a sudden we've got one elephant god that walks like a normal human being. Well, what if I told you that Ganesh was never an elephant? This right here is one of the earliest depictions or renderings that we can find of Ganesh. Now, does that look anything like an elephant? No. Check it out. What you have is some very weird face. And out of that face, you've got this breathing tube that culminates in this round canister right here. And he's got four arms, and the two arms have these axes in their hands. Now, if you look at this from a standpoint of not knowing technology, all of a sudden, if you look at this part right here, those look like big elephant ears. And then especially the breathing tube, that trunk of the elephant. And so, over time, Ganesh morphed from some type of a space traveler into an elephant. And I can prove this to you because the next statue is this. Do you see the transition already? How his face has become more elephant-like? The breathing tube has already turned into an elephant's trunk. And he's still holding this, this canister right here. He's getting already a little bit fatter. So my question is, did they see something like that? Because if you have absolutely no technological reference, and you just happen to live in India with Indian elephants, well then you're looking, if you have no clue what you're looking at, you can describe this the best with an elephant, with a trunk. And so the question is, did this happen? And the answer is a resounding
yes.
This guy right here can be found at the Museum of Natural History in New York City. I refer to him as the Rocket Man because that's what he is. He's the Rocket Man. But on the plaque down here, it says, God of Textiles.
What?
Yeah, really, right? Stupid. It also gives you the area, which is the Veracruz region in today's Mexico. It gives you the age, around 700 AD, and then on the fourth line, it gives you the following description: God of textiles, comma, nothing else is further known. And you know what? I actually appreciate that sentiment or that commentary because they concede that they don't know what the hell they're looking at. Because we've just all laughed at the idea or at the description that this is the god of textiles. Ask yourselves, what the hell is a god of textiles? It does not exist. It's a hollow phrase. It's a hollow phrase that was made up by some smart archaeologist at the end of the 19th or the 20th century. And they're like, oh yes, of course, this is a god of textiles, no question. Where in reality, what we're looking at here is totally some dude in some pressurized suit. He's got 6 wings for crying out loud. He's got this pack on his chest with tubes. And above all, look at his head. Do you see this skull cap that he wears? And it's not actual hair, because from the same region we can actually find statues where the artists were very adamant about creating the hairstyle, or not creating, but recreating or replicating the hairstyle that was, prominent back in the day. So when I see stuff like this, then I'm immediately reminded of something like that, where our ancestors saw something similar. And by the way, this is not a picture of an alien. So, but what's also glaring, of course, is that the face of this guy, he was found in the Olmec region of today's Mexico. And the Olmecs, everybody knows them. They're the guys who created these magnificent giant stone heads that are absolutely massive. Now, archaeologists are a very funny bunch, because to this day, the Olmecs are considered to be a great mystery. Why? Because according to mainstream archaeologists, the Olmecs appeared out of nowhere and then they disappeared. Just like that. And, they had a flourishing culture for 400 years, and then, they disappeared. But did they really? Because, according to the mainstream archaeologists, the Olmec heads are nothing else but carvings of the Olmec's beauty ideals that they gained while they were asleep. Now, do I really have to point out the elephant in the room? That what we're looking at here and what we're looking at here, these faces are African. 100% African. And so the question is, or the solution to the Olmecs is, they didn't disappear. They also didn't appear out of nowhere. They made contact from Africa. They went to the New World way before this Columbus dude showed up. Just like the Chinese were here before, just like the Minoans were here before, Scandinavians, and so on and so forth. And so there are a few. And then, of course, after they had, they lived here for 400 years, or after they traded or whatever, then they went back home to Africa. Mystery solved. Now, there are a few archaeologists who actually agree that the Olmecs were Africans, because, like I said, not to point out the elephant in the room, but it's pretty obvious. What makes more sense? That the native populations there encountered black people or Africans, and they were completely impressed, because the Africans might have told them, we are your rulers right now, we will teach you a few things, and then they will disappear again. Or that they all fell asleep, and this is the beauty ideal. Total bullshit. Just, nuts. So there are archaeologists who will agree that, these people had contact. But, of course, I wouldn't be the alien guy if I wouldn't suggest that this contact didn't necessarily, in my opinion, take place by sea, but because of the flight suit that we have here, that this took place by aviation. That these tribes or these cultures were in contact with each other by flight. And I know what I'm talking about, because there are many, many, many African texts in which we can read that they had access to flying machines, to flying chariots, that were not drawn by fiery horses and stuff like that. The fiery horses analogy came only afterwards. The further you go back in time, all the flying chariots were flying on their own accord. Only later, when stuff was added to these texts, all of a sudden there's talk about flying horses or flying or chariots being pulled by flying horses and things like that. And that is how they were then able to move these chariots into the sky. The flying horses idea was never there first. It only was added later. So keep that stuff in mind. And then besides all of these figurines and statues and carvings of bizarre-looking astronauts, we also have objects. And one of them is the one that you're probably familiar with. It's the gold flyer, the gold speeder from ancient Colombia. And this is from the pre-Columbian region called Tolima. And these objects were found as funerary objects for the deceased. That they needed to, just like with the river Styx, you needed to give the ferry guy, pieces of gold in order to be brought to the other side, or the netherworld. And so, what we have here is something that is not necessarily existent in nature. Because what we have here, because these are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of gold objects were found that look like this, that were put in these tombs. And out of these, like a chameleon, a peacock, and then you have frogs, and you have frogs again, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But we're now also told that this here is also a frog, that this here is also a fish. And mind you, what are you talking about? I don't see it, and I can show you. Does this really look like that? You be a judge. If you say yes, please, I implore you, leave. I will give you a refund. If you will tell me that this is that, please, get the hell out. Same counts for the idea of fish. This here is a fish. That and that is not the same. And here we have a gold object that clearly represents a bird. And since when do birds' tail fins are horizontal? This right here is a tail fin that is upright. And since when do birds have stabilizers? They don't. They're fine without stabilizers. So then, what are we talking about here? Because we have to remind ourselves that what we're looking at here is what in aviation is referred to as a low-wing aircraft, meaning the wing is attached at the bottom of the fuselage. Now, to suggest that this is a bird or a frog or a fish is incoherent, because in nature, see, what those people are not telling you is that birds and fish have their wings and their fins attached to the same place where we have our arms attached, at the shoulder girdle, and that is at the top of our bodies. And we can see this right here with the fish, how very aptly these fins have been attached to the tops of this body. And here, it's the exact same thing. And so, check out this guy right here. If I really have to describe to you what you're looking at, then I cannot help you. But it is so incredibly obvious, it's not even funny. And so, out of these hundreds of thousands of gold objects that have been found, 17 have been found that look like modern-day jets.